Hello, welcome back to my kitchen. Today we're going to be making a recipe from this Arizona cookbook that my mom bought for me while we were all out in Arizona visiting my brother and his family. I think it's like authentic recipes or, well, actually no. It's, yeah, they say authentic. I was going to say we're just like Arizona themed, but it says authentic on the front. So I'm going to hold them to that, which makes today's recipe very interesting because it's called Hobo Stew. So are there a lot of hobos in Arizona? Or were there a lot of hobos in Arizona? I don't know, but I was reading through and this one struck me as, it's simple, but interesting. I feel like it's not gonna be that flavorful. I mean, hobos probably don't have a lot of spices on hand, so I guess that makes sense. But you'll see what I mean after we run through the ingredients and get into cooking. Potatoes, carrots, celery, cabbage, candied tomatoes, beef bouillon cubes, ground beef, salt, and pepper. So the first step is where some interesting stuff already kind of kicks off. You're supposed to be making this in a 2-pound coffee can, which I don't have, but I did look up the dimensions of it, and it's roughly a little bit smaller than like my small Dutch oven. So I'm going to use that. And this first step, which might get thrown off a little bit because it gives you the water in inches, not in like cups. So it says fill it up 2 inches. So already I might have a little bit too much water in there, but fill it up 2 inches, add the beef bouillon cubes into that. And then I'm going to like turn it on a little bit because the water, based on the instructions on the side of the beef bouillon cubes, is supposed to be warm. So I'm just gonna turn that on, let them dissolve in there while we do the next step. The next step is the prep step, which usually we do first, but with the beef bouillon cubes needing to dissolve, figured I'd shift that to second and do that one first. So the prep step is just going to be to cut the potatoes, the celery, the carrots, and the cabbage, and just kind of, I'm gonna put them all in a bowl because everything's gonna kind of get dumped in the next step. The next step I talked about, then filmed, and now I'm talking about it again because there's a bit of a plot twist that came up that I feel like I should address beforehand. But the next step, super simple. Dump everything in, simmer for an hour. However, a bit of a catch happens when the Dutch oven runs out of space. So, as you'll see, midway through, I need to change to my larger Dutch oven, and hopefully nobody's following along at home, which I don't really know how you would do that. Well, I guess you probably could have done all these steps in tandem with me, but start with a larger Dutch oven. Don't do what I did and start in a smaller one, and then you won't have this issue. But you're gonna see me have that issue and then address it. The recap, dump everything in, simmer for an hour. You got Hobo Stew. All right, here we have it, Hobo Stew, hot off the presses. I am very curious to see how this goes because there are so few spices in it. Granted, I kind of cheated with my tomatoes being like the ones with like oregano and basil and stuff in there, so I kind of snuck in some spices that way. But normally this recipe would just be salt and pepper. And I'm also curious because the ground beef just goes in raw, which usually, well, to be fair, I don't do stews with ground beef, but typically you cook it and then kind of like add it in. So we'll see how that goes in terms of flavor and like texture and things like that. But it smells great, so that's promising. But we'll see. We'll see how it actually turns out. Going into this, as I stated, wasn't really expecting it to be out of the park flavor, which it's like obviously could use some more spices and things like that in there. It has good flavor just from the ingredients and like the broth and stuff, but it's definitely lacking. So this is going to be a recipe that you probably make and then you can tweak stuff and like add to in the future, but it's kind of a good base recipe. It's super simple also, like this will feed you, keep you full, sustain you, but it's definitely not necessarily a blank canvas, but it's a good kind of starting point for people to practice with experimenting of like adding different spices or adding different ingredients or like preparation methods. Like what if I cook the meat beforehand or cook the vegetables and kind of like that kind of stuff. Like what does that do to different things? So it's kind of like a good experiment point where like this is a control and you can kind of see what happens along the way. Like I already have a friend that I was talking to about making this like vegetarian and just be using vegetable broth and just don't put the ground beef in there. Probably would still be good. It wouldn't be as hearty, I assume, because obviously there's like no protein in this, but it would be still a valid alteration and dish afterwards. You could probably, I'm trying to think of what else. Ooh, one thing I was thinking about is like the potato itself that was in there. So like maybe change up what potato you use. Like these are just russet potatoes, like red potatoes? Is it just red potato? That doesn't sound right in my head. Or like Yukon Gold. Things like that might be better than what I used. But this recipe kind of, like I said, you're open to interpretation. You can kind of go down many paths from here. Maybe put like stewed meat in instead of ground beef. Possibilities are endless. So overall, I'm happy with it. I think it's a good intro to the Arizona cooking. Don't really know. It doesn't feel Arizona, but hopefully I pick out some other ones that are a little bit more. Well, I say that the Arizona ones that I want to try are like prickly pear something or other, and I don't have access to prickly pears here, but maybe I can find some by the end of the month. And on that note, bye Mom, still not dead. See you.